Welcome to Deep in the Valley, a Missouri Valley Conference basketball podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Bowser, joined as always by Brian Duttler, and this is your home for everything happening across the valley. From Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, Carbondale to Chicago. We're talking the schools, coaches, student athletes, history, and the stories that make the Missouri Valley Conference one of the most respected leagues in all of college athletics. So wherever you're joining us from across the valley, you're in the right place. Let's get deep in the valley. On today's episode, we are taking you behind the scenes of the Missouri Valley Conference with someone who has spent more than 3 decades helping shape its story. For 35 years, Mike Kern has served the Valley in a variety of leadership roles, from communications and media relations to scheduling, television, marketing, Hall of Fame initiatives, and has been a part of some of the biggest NCAA basketball events in the country. He's worked alongside commissioners, coaches, athletic directors, college presidents, student athletes, television partners, and national media while helping guide the conference through one of the most transformative periods in all of college athletics. If you've attended Arch Madness, followed the Valley in the NCAA tournament, or simply wondered how one of the nation's premier conferences operates behind the scene, today's guest has probably had something to do with making that happen. Mike, welcome to Deep in the Valley.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate what you guys do for our league. And after that introduction, I better not screw this up. Thank you.
We got confidence that you'll handle this okay. Talking a little bit about your service. Congratulations on 35 years of serving the Valley in the conference. And it's an incredible accomplishment, and excited to spend a little bit of time talking about your journey. So let's talk a little bit about the beginning, because every story's got a great beginning. And you grew up in St. Louis before attending the University of Missouri and then later Missouri State. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about growing up when sports kind of became a passion for you, and how eventually that led into sports communications in your current role?
Interestingly enough, my yearbook advisor was dating the sports information director at Mizzou at the time that I was on the yearbook staff. And I really didn't attend sports in high school. I love sports. I watch sports. I was a nerd. I looked at the box scores every morning in the agate section like every other nerd. But I didn't go to games at our high school. But Bob Brendel, was the sports information director at the time at Mizzou. He said, hey, if you've got anybody, send him my way. So I ended up working at Mizzou, and ironically, after my first year there, Jack Watkins showed up on campus, and he started working at Mizzou, and we've been together in some capacity for almost 40 years now. But I worked at Mizzou and then ran into Mark Stillwell, who was the sports information director, Hall of Famer, and COSIDA, and worked at Missouri State after that. And my first job at the conference was with Patty Viverito, and I did not get the job when I interviewed. The other person from Illinois State had more experience, and I had really none in a conference office setting, or really none as a full-time person. But she called when she was 8 months pregnant with her firstborn and said, hey, Dan Willis is leaving. His name was Dan Willis. And he goes, will you take the job? Because I have no time to interview people. And she said, I really liked you when I talked to you last year. And I took the job, and I've been there ever since. That's how it started. And I don't know how it's going to end yet, but that's where I am at right now.
Mike, I might backtrack a little bit with this question, but you grew up in St. Louis, so I think it's appropriate to ask, because this is what everybody who grew up in St. Louis asks each other, is where'd you go to high school?
Yeah, I went to Limburg, and we actually have a coworker that also went to Limburg High School, Kristen Swiderska, who's been with us 15 years now, but Limburg High School in South St. Louis.
And then as you're narrowing down your college choices, ultimately, why was the University of Missouri the right fit for you academically?
Academically, I wanted to go to J school. So I was a journalism major. I wanted to be the sportscaster on a station. Then after the first year or two, I didn't feel like I had the right ego for that. I wasn't really into the in front of people thing. I liked the behind the scenes storytelling, and that's how I ended up doing more of that. But I went into broadcast, and I had some radio and TV background, but nothing like that turned out to not really be my calling.
And so later you earned your master's degree at Missouri State, and you've already mentioned Mark Stillwell, Stilly, serving as a graduate assistant in athletic communications. And so is there a moment during those years when you realize this is really what I want to do for a career?
I never really thought about it. I just liked what I was doing, and I just kept doing it. And then suddenly here we are entering year 36. And I guess this is what I'm going to do when I grow up, right?
Yeah. Throughout your college experiences, were there some mentors that influenced you during that time? And have you held on to any of those lessons that you utilize in your work today?
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. All the people you run across, we've had so many longtime broadcasters, longtime sports information directors. Mark Stillwell was probably my biggest mentor. He was my first job, even though I was a graduate assistant, not a full-time employee. And then, of course, Doug Elgin. Everybody that has worked with Doug knows how great he is. And Patty Viverito, Jack, and Joe, longtime employees, all of them 25 plus years in our office. How could you not learn from people that set a good example?
So, Mike, let's open the vault on the Valley. Take us back to 1991, your first year with the league. What do you remember about the Missouri Valley Conference office at that time?
It was a lot smaller. We were not real big right now, but we only had, I think, 4 or 5 people working for us at the time. But we were churning out as much as we could, and we were dealing with fax machines. We didn't have internet, so the technology certainly was different. The methodology was different. Jack and I would sit around the conference room back in the day, and instead of emailing releases, or we'd fold up a bunch of releases on paper, get them to the post office by 4 o'clock or whatever the time was, and that's how we communicated our weekly notes through the mail. And by the time people got it, everything was outdated and old. And the internet has been great. It's also been awful. But back in the day, things were just at a different pace. Things were slower. There wasn't any automated statistical programs. We were doing stuff by Excel spreadsheets, or people were calling their stats on the phone and we're just entering them manually. So things are different. Technology, everything's so much faster, for better or worse. I felt like back then, and I think the younger generation probably makes fewer phone calls. We had to talk to people on the phone back then, and that has just continued. That's how you communicated, by phone and by mail, like regular snail mail. And now you can communicate via email, texting, and you can see people on Zooms. And so the communication process is a little different than it used to be. Jack and I, since we're old school people, we still get on the phone quite a bit and talk to people. But I think the younger generation didn't grow up that way, that don't feel a need to do it that way, and they can still do a great job. It's just different.
And so you've had multiple roles during your time with the Valley. Can you talk to the listeners about the areas you've managed over the years, maybe your favorite, and then what your day-to-day focus is entering 26-27 academic year?
Mostly it's been communications. For the longest time, it was more of a communications, media relations type of role, updating record books, to handling the player of the week selections, all conference awards, helping at championships. It's evolved into a little bit of that, plus championship and sport administration. I'm the primary contact with men's basketball coaches. I've transitioned to men's soccer coaches. I had women's soccer last year. I do both golf. So I had baseball. So it's a little bit of everything. And sometimes when you're a communications person and you're a sport administrator, you're doing all of it. You're doing from A to Z, because there's other people that have a sport assignment that don't do the communications piece. They just run the championships and run coaches meeting. But since I've got that background, I can do the whole thing. But day to day, sometimes you don't know what you're going to do in a given day. You show up and something comes up. Somebody has something that needs attention, and then that's your day. So it varies, but generally we have certain tasks that have to be accomplished, and we get on it. And then if something else gets in the way, then we get to the task later.
Yeah, so one thing that stands out about your careers is longevity in the office. And let's open up that Valley Vault again. And you've got a lot of experience to draw off of for this question. What are maybe a couple of your favorite Valley signature moments over the 3+ decades you've been with the league?
I'd say most of them have taken place in postseason play, and I've got to witness some great runs in the NCAA tournament. Wichita State's perfect run back in 2014 was remarkable, and they ended up losing their only game in front of us in St. Louis when we hosted a first and second round. I guess back then it was probably called the second and third round, but they lost to Kentucky, and it was devastating, but that was memorable. Of course, I think the biggest moment that everybody will agree on, maybe especially Dr. Bowser, is when Northern Iowa beat Kansas in 2010. That was iconic. I can remember Barry Hinson. Everybody knows who Barry Hinson is, but he was an assistant on Kansas's staff. And I ran into him before the game, and I ran into Jake before the game, and Barry looked edgy. It was almost as if the Kansas staff didn't believe him when he said they're good. And Jake had this air of confidence about what was going to happen. And then Jordan Eggleseder, top of the key, hits a 3-pointer to start the game, a 7'1" kid. And I'm like, we're going to win this game, because they're not expecting any of that. And it went down to the wires, we all know, and Ali hit that shot. But that has to be the one. If I had to circle the best moment, the most iconic moment, and when you realize your phone wouldn't stop ringing or getting texts, that was it. That was the first one.
That's awesome. So you've had a front row seat to the transformation of the Valley, conference growth, school departures, new additions. Can you talk about the conference office and their ability to be resilient in the face of those types of challenges?
Yeah, you can talk about the two most troublesome times in our tenure as COVID. COVID was awful in terms of not knowing. The world didn't know. We didn't know. We all thought we weren't going to be doing this anymore and even playing games. And then we found a way to try to get some games in the next year. We played all the conference games, and then we had to cancel the Drake Northern Iowa tournament game. I think the only tournament game that we never got to play. And that was awful. And of course, the House settlement and what we're doing right now and trying to manage our finances is difficult because we're paying for a bill that really the players and student athletes in our league, they've deserved the right to make money, but they weren't the ones getting we're paying a bill that we agreed to pay that other people were transgressing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense for Bows and I definitely know that side of it. Myself, I've been in and out of the Valley footprint with my career quite a few different times. And what has been beneficial was beginning early on is remembering when the Valley announced a partnership with ESPN3. It was more than a handful of years before ESPN Plus became mainstream. And can you talk a little bit about the vision and the foresight the conference office had in signing that deal before streaming really was really popular?
Yeah, we were trying to do some streaming in-house, and we were just experimenting with how we could get things out there. This probably was a vision of Jack Watkins in terms of how do we do this? He knew the right players in the market, and we sat down and had a conversation, and we said, how can we make this happen? And I remember the announcement. We actually did unveil some of our partnerships with ESPN and ESPN3. The initial one was ESPN 360, and we were doing stuff on that for a little bit, both football and basketball. But it's amazing what we've been able to do. We're delivering over 700 800 events a year league wide, and that's how people ingest their television now. They get it on, whether it's on their tablet through their TV or just on their iPhone. We've been able to touch a lot of people, and I think it's helped our coaches maybe get some players too.
Most fans only see the games, and they don't maybe necessarily understand everything that happens behind the scenes to make those things happen. One responsibility many fans may not realize you have had in the past is helping build the men's basketball schedule. How complex has scheduling become? And is there anything that we should be prepared to see in the conference schedule this season?
It's become, with an odd number of teams, it becomes harder with us playing the first week of conference tournament games with our CBS contract where we need to play early, which means we have a shorter window to play 20 games. We are trying to carve out 2 conference games before Christmas, and that's difficult because now that teams can play 32 games, most are trying to, and they're trying to spread out their 12 non-conference games before Christmas and avoid finals. The calendar is just tough to be able to do that. One of the things that we did talk to coaches and athletic directors about was the ability to play, like women's basketball, they played 2 games in 3 days. So we'll have a couple of those instances in which we do that. Not more than 2, not more than 2 on the men's side. Women do it a lot more. They do it almost every weekend. But the men have agreed to do that. So you can almost have a scheduled day off. Last year we were playing a game, resting 2 days, playing a game, resting 2 days, playing a game, resting 2 days, almost throughout the schedule. That became difficult for the teams that had the stretch where they couldn't schedule, hey, we're going to have Monday off. Nobody could do that. They just had to pick and choose when they were going to take a day off. And sometimes you prepped 1 day for a team, and sometimes you got to prep for 2 based on your own decisions. So I think that's a new wrinkle, but we're still going to play 18 league games after Christmas, and we're going to play 2 before, and we'll see how it goes. But I think having the scheduled day off opportunity is helpful. I think it'll help with rest and recovery for some of our kids.
I think there was a couple of years ago, maybe it was Missouri State's last year in the league, where there was a schedule quirk where they played the same school within a 5-day period or 3-day period. I can't remember what it was, but any quirky things that we might see like that popping up this year?
No, I don't think so. And that was one where we were down to the wire. We got the schedule. Everything was great. Everybody got what they wanted, and our scheduler at the time missed it. And I caught it. I said, we can't do this. And I said, wait a minute, let me call both schools and see what their appetite is for this. And they both agreed to it. I think it might have been Scott Nagy's first year, and it was Missouri State's probably last year. You're right. And they both said, okay. And we won't do that. That's not something we do. Our program is to prevent that from happening. And I think he loosened the parameter, but everybody else got almost a perfect schedule. We say, okay, let's make some phone calls and see if they'll do it. We're not going to do that. Last year, Evansville ended with back-to-back games on Saturday, Sunday. That was because they had the makeup game that was canceled from the snow. But if we have a situation like that, it's caused by something abnormal, but it's going to be pretty much business as usual.
Yep. So you've overseen communications, television, marketing, Hall of Fame initiatives, and dozens of NCAA tournament events. If someone sat in your chair for a week, what would surprise them most about your role?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the surprise would be the surprises. You don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes you're not expecting to have to deal with a certain topic, and that becomes your day, and sometimes it's a week. I think for me, the hardest part in the summer is the scheduling component, because schools are trying to figure out a way to build their schedules. And we've got a week blocked out for the men, and we've got 4 days blocked out for the women before Christmas. And you get a call from a coach saying, hey, we've got an opportunity to play Kansas on this day. I know we're not supposed to play that day. And we say, yes, you have to play that game, or other things like that. But when you get 4 or 5 of those, it really puts a wrinkle in what you're trying to accomplish. So that part is probably the most mentally challenging part in terms of juggling the needs of the schools and making sure that we can still put together a schedule that makes sense for everybody. Scheduling is probably the hardest summer project, and I'm involved with almost all of them, but the basketball is obviously the most visible.
So when it goes, Mike, when it does go to the scheduling aspect side, like with this 26-27 conference schedule, where are you guys at? Are you 50% of the way there? 75% is in review process. Walk us through the process, and when do you hope to have it completed?
We're hoping to have it done much earlier than last year. And part of the reason it has come out so late is that we've been really trying to protect our ESPN2 and ESPN windows. And those, we do wild cards for men's basketball and wild cards for CBS Sports Network. But the waiting part has always been like, okay, what is the Big East doing? What is the Big 12 doing? What is the Big 10 doing? What are the best dates in which we should do the best matchups? Okay, Saturday, February 21st. We got to have Drake and Northern Iowa play that day because that's an ESPN window. And if they are both good, we're going to get that. And right now we're just saying we're just going to match up the rivalries as best we can on the weekends and take a guess. And ESPN and CBS Sports will still get great games, but we're just going to be taking a gamble on what those windows are because we don't know yet. We won't know probably till late September, but our schools need to know earlier. And the reason they need to know is because they have to book other events. Everybody's got to make some money in their own buildings. And if we're not telling them what their basketball schedule is till October, they're having a hard time booking other things.
Yeah.
So you've served as media coordinator for nearly 80 conference and NCAA basketball events. And so it's Valley Vault time again. Is there a favorite behind the scenes story from one of those events that maybe fans have never heard that you're allowed to talk about?
I don't know if it's the favorite one, but one of the most memorable one is when we had a Creighton-Wichita State matchup, and we had to go to the TV truck to confirm that the time was correct. This was before replay. This is before DV Sports. Before we had that. But we had a TV truck, and we had a clock, and we had a stopwatch. And we confirmed, and if you can remember, it was Creighton beating Wichita State, and Booker Woodfox hit a shot. It was like less than 2 seconds, and he took a dribble or two, and it was good, but by the naked eye, you're thinking there's no way that's good. And the coach of Wichita State at that time was pretty adamant that it wasn't good, but we did confirm by looking at the TV monitor and the stopwatch, and that it was good. But that was memorable. I don't know if that's the biggest moment behind the scenes, but that was something that happened that was, let's say, interesting anyway.
Was that a quarterfinal Arch Madness game?
I'm not sure. It might have been. It might have been later, though. I think it might have been a semi.
Okay, and you might be right. I remember being in the building that day and having a Wichita State fan hand me their tickets for the next day. So getting free tickets for the next day was really great, despite the outcome for Wichita State fans. So, Mike, one of the biggest announcements in conference history came this summer with the unveiling of a new vision for Arch Madness beginning in 2027. Before you got on, Brian and I were talking about it. I would say that both of us we're super supportive of what the Valley office is trying to do. I'm a college administrator in my daily life. And so I understand sometimes you make decisions because you've got all of the information in front of you and it's the best decision. But some of the fans out there might not have privy to all of that information and they may be reactive as fans tend to be. But I would tell you that Brian and I are very supportive, but we may ask some questions that hopefully maybe bring a little bit of clarity to some of those other fans out there. But so many of these decisions were a result of extensive planning by the conference office and the board of directors. And we were talking about it earlier. We understand that the conference office leadership and the college presidents, their job and their desire is to make the Valley a multiple bid league again, and hopefully make that be the standard. And I think some of the things that you guys are trying to do right now are in response to that. You're putting the best foot forward, what you guys see as the best step forward to that vision of making that the standard again. So can you talk just a little bit about the changes and what your thought process was as a conference league and the board of directors, the college presidents felt this is the best way for us to move forward as a league?
And you framed that very well, because that's the genesis of the conversation, knowing that the NCAA tournament was going to expand, and a unit over the course of 6 years is over 2 million. That's the one flexible source of income that we really have. We have some fixed income. We've got sponsors. We've got some great partners, but the number of units that we can get in an NCAA tournament, now there's a unit component for women's basketball too, but the number of units that we can earn for men's and women's basketball is the one flexible source of income that we have to pursue. And the best avenue for that, of course, is getting multiple teams in and put our teams in the best position to win a game or two. We had to try something. And I know the decision, I'm totally aware of social media, so I know the decision isn't popular with our purists, and that we changed the format. And I think there's some excitement about women's basketball coming and joining us in St. Louis for the men. They've deserved the right to play under the Arch Madness banner, because that's an iconic thing. But we had to try something. The presidents saw the opportunity with the tournament expanding at the national level that let's do something. We can't just sit on our hands and say, oh, we didn't. At least we tried something. We hope this is the right thing. We think it is. And I know there's some people that are it's going to take an adjustment. It's a little different. It's a lot different, but there's other leagues that are trying the same stuff.
And you mentioned just a little bit on the women's basketball championship getting to be underneath that Arch Madness banner. And what opportunities does this create for the conference, the student athletes, and the fans, with the women being able to participate with the men now?
For institutions, it's about synergy of travel. You get instead of sending a band one week and sending a band the next week and sending your administrators, and it's more convenient if they're all there at once. Now, you could have a team that loses on Wednesday and your men don't play till Saturday. Not great, but you may have your men and women both playing on Saturday. So there's some synergy of travel and economics of staff and everybody being at the same place at the same time. And Jeff has said this on numerous calls that the men's fans will gain some interest in women's basketball and vice versa. And I know there's not a lot of overlap in the fan bases, but there's some, and there's a chance to grow both.
One thing, can we piggyback just a second? I just saw the Valley office release today a partnership in non-conference scheduling for women's basketball with the American, the Atlantic 10, and the Ivy League, and talk a little bit about those two events that are going to take place in Richmond, Virginia, and Nashville, Tennessee, and include representatives from the Valley, Murray State, and Belmont. Yeah,
and that's another one of those initiatives that we're trying everything we can, and we're trying to get to scheduling alliances in men's basketball too. That's a little bit more challenging, but women's basketball, what we've had happen is that we are playing the Power Four schools in women's basketball in Northern Iowa, and Drake has had the opportunity to play Iowa and Iowa State on many occasions, but we have a much better chance if we're playing a top-tier team in those other leagues. And so the goal is to play really good basketball teams and have a chance at a win instead of playing very high major that's ranked 5 in the country, and the odds of winning that on the road are very difficult. So we're trying to position ourselves to get better wins and play better opponents.
How are Murray State and Belmont selected this first year for that event?
A lot of it's discussions with athletic directors and the ADs who were part of the conversation. So there was some interest among the other conferences on who would raise their hand. And some of it was just based on what they had scheduled already and what they didn't. So, but clearly Belmont and Murray State have been some of our premier programs recently, but I know Drake and Northern Iowa are always going to be in that conversation.
Yeah, you bet. So another significant change in Arch Madness rewards the regular season by advancing the top 2 seeds for both men and women directly into the semifinals. And can you walk us through the thinking behind that decision and what benefits the conference believes that it will create deeper into the postseason?
A lot of reasons behind that. Most of it's just to make sure your better teams, if they're playing their first game, and it's just last year, Drake was a 9 seed, Belmont was the 1. if Belmont's first game, regardless win or lose against Drake, if their first game is against a 4 or a 3, they're just playing a better opponent, and it just doesn't metrically hurt our top 2 teams. And they've earned the right to get that advantage. Now, if we had more days in the building, we may have taken a different approach where we advance, like if we call it the flying V bracket. The 3 and 4 get an advantage, the 4, 5, and 6 get an advantage. We just don't have enough days in the building to be able to do that and combine both the men and women together. Our days in the building are what they are. So in order to advance the 1 and 2, which they have earned that right, and the coaches were part of that conversation too. It wasn't presidential driven. It was universally discussed by coaches and presidents alike.
Do you think that, here's a question on maybe the finance side of this, is there a financial benefit to adding one more day in the Enterprise Center as opposed to, say, renting out the Extreme Center for 4 days like we did last year for the Valley Women's Tournament?
If you're talking about 2 different venues of rent, that's a financial benefit to all play in the same building. Enterprise Center's expensive. It's worth the price, I will say, but it's expensive. But 2 buildings and 2 forms of rent are more expensive than 1.
Yep. Yeah, true. Another topic fans have discussed is limiting the tournament to 10 teams from the traditional 11, and what factors were considered during that evaluation.
Again, that was a matter of logistics probably, because I know we tried to figure out a way. When I say we, the presidents tried to figure out a way to include all 11 schools. And ultimately, some of the men's basketball coaches in particular said, you know what, if I'm 11th, that's on me. I've got to be better. I got work to do. So they were, and I'm a purist too. So advancing the 1 and 2 was something that 5 years ago I said, we can't do that, but we're doing it. And I think it's probably in this time frame and where we are in the national landscape, it's the right move.
So every major change brings excitement, but also challenges as the conference office prepares for 27. What opportunities about the changes to Arch Madness excite you the most? And maybe what are some of the biggest logistical challenges that your team is already preparing for?
I think just figuring out with the Wednesday game day now with women's basketball, everybody that was practicing on Wednesday is no longer getting a full practice. So everybody will get an opportunity to do their game day shoot around, but there's no real lengthier practice in the building. So that's a logistical issue that the coaches are aware of, that they don't get the full practice. Just trying to figure out how to keep volunteers awake. It's like you got 4 days of 4 games and you're there from 6 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the morning every day. If you're a staff member, it's just long days. And we're very excited about the challenges of putting this together because it is a new thing for us too. We've done 4 game games before, but we haven't done them 4 days in a row. But trying to work through all the wrinkles of how we manage the table crews, the stats crew, the volunteers, and the teams themselves, hotels, all those things that are, you go from what was 12 teams at one point for men to 11 now to 20. You got to figure out the hotel piece pretty quickly.
So you speak on the hotel side of this right out of the chute. And the one thing that comes to mind is, are there any other events going on in St. Louis this year during our?
Yeah, there is. There's a volleyball tournament that's there this year, which we've got our rooms held. We're not in any jeopardy of the room blocks. And some schools will, if they choose to, they'll have the option to stay in a little bit further out west. And if you're familiar with St. Louis, the Clayton area or somewhere else, but all the hotels are great properties. We got good partners and we're not worried about the hotel piece, but there is another event in town. It's a volleyball tournament the same week as Arch Madness.
Hey, let's fast forward then to March of 2027. Yeah. When fans leave the Enterprise Center after experiencing the new format for the first time, what do you hope they're saying?
I hope they're saying that we were wrong. When I say we, I think the fans are very skeptical of the new format. I hope they go, you know what, that was actually awesome. And I'm glad we're headed this direction. And then come 9 days later, if we get 2 teams in or more for both gender, people will be like, okay, we get it. We get why it happened. It wasn't as bad as we thought. We think we have an opportunity to do something special. And I hope they all leave thinking this was actually pretty cool.
We talked a little bit about the opportunity, like you said, to maybe have some crossover fans, but you get that collective in one space, whether it be inside or outside the arena. Does the conference office have any ideas about maybe fan zones or things maybe even outside of Ballpark Village that folks can take advantage of in between sessions?
Yeah, we're working on that. Of course, the announcement was fresh to some of our staff too. So we do have Ballpark Village, which will be a great landing spot for everybody. But there'll be some other hospitality areas that we haven't ironed out yet. But we'll have more than just that. But there'll be plenty of places for people to go when their team's not playing.
So another exciting development for the conference is Commissioner Jeff Jackson's appointment to the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Committee. As an office, what do you think that appointment means to Valley basketball?
Jeff certainly, as Jill Redmond was appointed to the Women's Basketball Committee, she's our deputy last year. So for the first time, we have our number one and our number two in a basketball committee setting. So we certainly will have some insight of what the future of the basketball tournament, the national basketball tournament holds, and how we can best position what we do. Jeff is the vice chair of the Men's Basketball Oversight Committee. He's a 30-year coach. He's an administrator. He will not only add value to the room, but he'll take the value of what that room provides to him and bring it back to us.
Yeah, the Valley has always been a league that performs on a national stage. Based on our conversations with other head coaches so far that we've had in the league, they're doing everything they can to build programs that are worthy of at-large consideration. So does the expansion of the NCAA tournament help the Valley become a multi-bid league again, or does their performance historically help that narrative, especially with someone that will be able to participate in those conversations, not necessarily on the Valley teams, but just the overall general conversations of tournament participants?
A little bit of both. I think the basketball committee, they're all human beings. So they watch basketball. They know the culture of the strength of conference. They know Missouri Valley teams perform historical performance. Now, that's not how they're going to select teams based on, they're going to look at a year by year basis, but they know that our teams are good, right? They know. So that's part of it, just the human nature, the human element of when they're evaluating. But I think we can all agree that even though the tournament field expanded, they're not creating a bunch of at-large spots for mid-majors. So we've got a small window, and it may be one or two of those extra 8 that'll be our opportunity to get. So we've got to figure out a way to get them. We got to make sure that we get our AQ. We got to get one of those other spots.
We talk about, I think it was 99 to 07. The league was a multiple bid league. And I really thought that the conference office worked really hard with the head coaches in the league at that time to talk to them about the importance of scheduling and maybe even mastering the RPI. And now with the shift to the net, are there similar conversations about statistical analysis, right? Or predictive analytics as we're working, as the conference office is working with head coaches about scheduling in the non-conference? How deep do those conversations go about building a conference resume that keeps the Valley in the top 9, top 8 in the discussion in the country in the net rankings?
Yeah, and we do have a non-conference scheduling policy in place. And I will say that the RPI was probably a little bit more mathematically easier to, I don't want to say manipulate, because when we had multiple bids, we deserved them. But it's a little bit more easier to figure out how to master the system. The net's just different. It is not set up to favor teams that aren't playing top 50 teams every conference game. So we've got to figure out the best metric and how to attack it. So our schools are encouraged and required to play a certain number of what we call Q1, Q2 quality opponents each year. And how they get there is very difficult because now you're having teams that they could play that won't play them because now they have to be bought and they won't play a home and home. So trying to build a schedule, and I feel so bad for our coaches, both men's and women's. It's just so difficult to find a regional opponent that meets the criteria. So you're going to see some teams playing like Northern Iowa played at St. Mary's last year. Yep. That was a great game, and they were close to winning that game. But that's the kind of chances that we're going to have to take to make us not relevant, but more relevant.
Do you feel like the agreement that you made with the American, the Atlantic 10, and the Ivy is something that they could explore, that the conference office could explore in the future on the men's side as well?
I've had those same conversations with different leagues, but yeah, we're trying. And I think it's just a matter of other leagues finding out that it's the right thing to do for them too. And sometimes you run it by coaches and they all want to do it. Sometimes coaches from other leagues don't want to do it. So it's a matter about finding the right time to play the game, and whether that is like the old bracket busters model where you're playing a game in February against top tier teams from 3 other leagues and you're matching up your top 3. It's just difficult to piece that together during the conference season, as our conference season is already are tight and convoluted, but we're trying. It's just a matter of Jeff just continuing to bang the drum and find a league that'll agree to do what we want to do.
You bet. So as the chair of the Missouri Valley Conference Hall of Fame Committee, you've helped preserve the history of this incredible league. What does that responsibility mean to you?
I love it. And it's quite honestly, it's like we have our Hall of Fame. And we've now transitioned to an in-person one every other year. And the in-person one will feature current members. The in-person one will feature past members, which we're basically just trying to catch up with people deserve to be honored. But I've never been to a ceremony because we have always had practices and other things going on that I've had to attend to in my other role. So I've really cherished the ability to work with our institutions. And there's usually one rep from each school that helps build this. There's a nomination process over the summer. There's a voting process, and the Hall of Fame committee from our institutions, they're great. They get it. They understand the diversity, and they understand the balance between players that played a long time ago, younger players that are just out of the league 5 years ago or more. So they do a great job of balancing what we're trying to do. But I enjoyed the process. I enjoy seeing those honored on court when I'm able to see them in person. But it's been a great honor to be part of that.
Yeah, just how difficult is it comparing these great players, coaches, and contributors from different generations?
It's a challenge, and it becomes more of a challenge for some of the younger people that are now on our Hall of Fame committee, because I've seen a lot of these people play in person, quite honestly. So I've benefited by knowing this person needs to be in, trust me. And we'll make the argument internally. We push certain people that are deserving, but yeah, I think it's very difficult to compare an All-American from 1964 against somebody that's an All-American from 2013, because all the things are different. The measurables are different. Sometimes it's just a matter of trying to relive history in your mind.
So when people think about the Valley, what do you hope that they appreciate that maybe doesn't get enough attention in the media on a national level?
About how special we are. I'm going to go back to some of the NCAA tournament games I've been to, and I will tell you there's a couple of instances, maybe two or three, that I can remember that one of our teams is beating a high major in the NCAA tournament, and the fans start chanting MVC. They're not rooting for Bradley, they're rooting for the league, and I don't think that happens in other places. I think our fan bases genuinely root for each other unless they're playing one another. But when we get to the national stage, we're all in it together. I think that's special, and I don't think that happens anywhere else.
I think you're right. In fact, Brian, you're nodding your head because you know what I'm going to say. That's been a common theme of all the head coaches that we've spoken to already. Even the folks that are new to the league, I think that they have seen that as they've been outside of the league. And it is actually one of my favorite parts about being a fan of the Valley, for sure.
There's definitely a clear understanding among all of our coaches that we all got to be better together. And if we're all better together, and if I can help you be better, just don't beat me, but I want everybody to be better. Everybody wants to be lifting each other up, because you're only as good as your last place team. And we want to make sure our last place team is really good.
That's right.
So one of the things that Dr. Bowser and I like to do here is to end our podcast with our guests is do rapid fire questions with you. So we're going to have some pretty quick ones for you, and whatever pops right in your mind, just go ahead and let us know your thoughts. So the first one is, what is your favorite Arch Madness memory?
I'm going to have to say Wes Washburn's shot.
Nice. Your favorite venue to visit in the Valley for work when you're traveling?
Past or present, I'll go Creighton or Wichita, because they were always sold out. It was a raucous event. I would say of the past, those are the two favorite.
Yep.
So most memorable post-game press conference you've ever attended?
Oh, I would say when Barry Hinson learned that he had lost his job on the way to the podium, and he made everybody cry.
Yeah.
We had Coach Hinson on, and he spoke about that himself.
That was a moment. And he actually, as he said, hey, and I believe they played Northern Iowa in the game. And he said, I need to talk to Jake. And he went into Northern Iowa locker room, talked to Ben, and he talked to the players that were sitting there, and he let them know. But as you all could attest, Barry's a class individual.
Without question, one of our favorite people, for sure. So this one I might be foreshadowing here, but one coach every media member loved to interview.
Okay, let's go, Barry.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like? He's Mr. Quote. He was the one that would say the best things all the time. So Barry would probably be everybody's top guy.
How about Brian and I talk about this quite frequently? How can we grow as a league in each one of our 11 cities? How can we grow student engagement and attendance at Valley home games?
It's a good question. I think what the schools are doing on their campuses are all trying. So I think there's just going to be special events. Make it fun. Make it fun. And that's what we're going to try to do at Arch Madness is make it fun, because outside of our institutions, our fans are the second most important thing outside of making sure that our institutions are taken care of.
Yep. And the last quick hitting one, we ask all of our guests this one, and no better person to ask other than Mr. St. Louis here is so when Bows and I come to St. Louis for Arch Madness, where are you sending us for a pregame meal? And do you have a go-to order at that establishment?
Oh, good question. I'm thinking downtown. We used to have Charlie Gito's, which was an Italian place downtown, but they're no longer. Anywhere at Ballpark Village is excellent. There's so many good places in Soulard. I don't know if you've been to Soulard, which is in South St. Louis. But if I had to pick a place, I'd recommend Pappy's Barbecue.
Do you have a go-to order, Mike, at Pappy's?
Burn ends for everybody that goes to barbecue places, right? Burn ends for me.
Yeah, burn ends for us too. Absolutely. So, Mike, this has been an incredible conversation. For 35 years, you've helped tell the story of the Missouri Valley Conference while helping guide it through one of the most transformative eras in college athletics. Before we let you go, one final question. You've dedicated much of your professional life to serving this conference. When someone asks you what makes the Valley special, what do you tell them?
It's the people. It's people like you guys. It's like you guys are the epitome of our fan base. Everybody loves this league so much. You're doing a podcast about us, right? So I think it's the people. It's the people that make this special.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Your work has really helped shape not only the Valley, but also the experience of countless student athletes and coaches and media members and fans throughout the years. And so we appreciate everything you've done for the Valley. And we are so grateful that you've spent some time with us today. So that's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate all the listeners spending a part of your week listening to us talking about Missouri Valley Conference basketball. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and follow along as we continue telling the stories that make this conference so special. From Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, Carbondale to Chicago. For Brian Duttler, I'm Chris Bowser. We'll see you next time, Deep in the Valley.